Hi, everyone. I'm Steph Knoll with the Oregon Trails Coalition, and I'm so happy to be here with my friend and colleague Jody Belfi from the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department to welcome you to the celebration of the 50th anniversary of Oregon's Recreation Trails System Act. We also invite all of you to introduce yourselves in the chat. The Oregon Trails Coalition was formed with the vision of a statewide network of sustainable trails that connect Oregonians of all backgrounds and abilities to the outdoors, build a culture of environmental and cultural stewardship and healthy recreation, provide an off-street network for traveling within and between Oregon communities, and attract a wide range of users that contribute to Oregon's urban and rural economies. So much work has been done over the years towards this vision by volunteers, advocates, land managers, tourism partners, public agency staff, and business partners that in 2017, we asked the question, what could be possible if we formed a statewide coalition to collaborate, learn from each other, and advocate together for the further investment in our trails? Today, we're excited to pause and celebrate the past, present, and future individuals and partnerships that make the trails we love and the trails we dream of possible. Over to you, Jody.
Thank you so much, Steph, for the introduction and great intro. It has been so great to watch you and the Trails Coalition do so much work in recent years and to be able to be part of it. And again, welcome to everyone who is tuning in, and thank you so much for coming to day one of the 2021 summit. Hopefully you were able to catch our fantastic plenary session before this, and if not, that you can check it out once the recordings are made available. So we are so excited to celebrate with you over the next hour plus. You will hear from and see some of the great trail work that's taken place over the last 50 years, learn more about the Trails Act, and also look forward to the future. We created a few videos to help tell the story, and we're going to show those today, and we'll also sprinkle in some live segments and have some guests joining us later in the session. But first, while we are just focused on the last 50 years, it's especially important that we start off with a land acknowledgement that I will read. Over 60 tribes and bands of indigenous peoples have lived in the Northwest region since time immemorial. Despite the treaties of the 1800s, termination, restoration, and other barriers, 9 tribes are currently federally recognized in what is now Oregon. Other federally recognized tribes outside of Oregon have interests in the state, and still others are working towards this recognition. Today, tribes work extensively to manage resources throughout their original territories, playing active roles in their regions, counties, states, and communities, leveraging their extensive knowledge and history of the area. In Oregon, trails and outdoor recreation occur on the ancestral lands of these original peoples and current caretakers. We are called to seek out the history of the places where we recreate and continue to learn how to best participate in their caretaking. And you can find this acknowledgement on the Summit website, along with some great resource links and articles about moving beyond land acknowledgement in our work. So now we are going to start with a video that we created to help tell the story of what the Trails Act is and what it did. Again, feel free to engage in the chat, introduce yourself, and you might see some familiar faces or have your own stories to tell as you watch this video about our history and some of the things you may have been involved with in the last 50 years. And with that, we hope you enjoy. The Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, Oregon Recreation Trails Advisory Council, and Oregon Trails Coalition are thrilled to be celebrating 2021 as the 50th anniversary of the Oregon Recreation Trails System Act. We welcome all of you to celebrate with us and sit back to learn about and hear from some of our early and current leaders in the state's trail community. To tell the story of the Oregon Recreation Trails System Act requires going back in time to the passage of the National Trails Act. Excitement over trails and recreation was increasingly growing across the country in the 1950s, and in 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson delivered a special address to Congress, stating, "The forgotten outdoors people of today are those who like to walk, hike, ride horseback, or bicycle. For them, we must have trails as well as highways. Old and young alike can participate. Our doctors recommend and encourage such activity for fitness and fun. I'm requesting, therefore, that the Secretary of the Interior work with his colleagues in the federal government and with state and local leaders and recommend to me a cooperative program to encourage a national system of trails, building up the more than 100,000 miles of trails in our national forests and parks. As with so much of our quest for beauty and quality, each community has opportunities for action. We can and should have an abundance of trails for walking, cycling, and horseback riding in and close to our cities. In the backcountry, we need to copy the great Appalachian Trail in all parts of America and to make full use of rights-of-way and other public paths. Following President Johnson's speech, the federal government released the Trails for America report in 1966. The report directed the federal government to increase miles of trails on the land they managed and to offer technical assistance to states. It also recommended that states institute their own trail programs by increasing mileage, emphasizing trails in their statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plans, or SCORPs, to fund trails through grant programs, and to encourage cooperative planning with local governments. The National Trail System Act passed 2 years later in 1968.
I also have before me the first federal legislation providing a national system of both urban and rural trails. The simplest pleasures and healthful exercise of walking in a natural setting have been almost impossible for the millions of Americans who live in the cities. And where natural areas exist within the cities, they are usually not connected by walkways. And in many cities, there's simply just no footpaths that lead out of the city into the countryside. Our history of wise management of America's national forests has assisted us in designating the initial elements of the national trail system. 2 national scenic trails, one in the east and one in the west, are being set aside as the first components of the trail system: the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail. The legislation also calls for a study of 14 additional routes for possible inclusion in the trail system.
Building off of the energy happening at the national level, Oregon, as well as other states, considered passing their own version of the National Trails Act. And 3 years later, in 1971, the Oregon Recreation Trail System Act was passed by the state legislature and signed into law. Oregon's Trails Act established the Oregon Recreation Trails Advisory Council, or ORTAC, and outlined considerations for selecting and establishing recreation trails. It also provided recommendations around partnering with youth corps and utilizing trails for educational opportunities. While the act didn't have an immediate impact as far as creating and establishing new trails or getting shovels in the ground, it provided the vision and the mechanisms for the state and for ORTAC to start laying the groundwork. Ernie Drapella was one of those first ORTAC members and their first chair.
My name is Ernie Drapella, and I have been a member of the Oregon Recreation Trails Council, or ORTAC, for 35 years. Well, the passage of the ORTAC Trails Act was rather interesting because it occurred in 1971 at a time when there was a lot of interest in environmental issues. And so it was kind of on the coattails of other bigger issues, including the bottle bill, the bicycle bill, and the billboard bill. And those were passed very well, I would say relatively easily. And the bicycle and trail interests combined into creating support for that. Legislators know how to count votes, and they could sense the enthusiasm that was out in the public for these measures. And so the measure was passed, and suddenly a lot of communities joined in and said, wow, we need to be part of that. And that added a lot of fuel to the enthusiasm and the justification for creating trails. And so trails became very popular, and legislators realized that.
Governor Tom McCall confirmed the first 8 ORTAC members in 1972. They were directed to advise the State Parks and Recreation Division, which was then housed under the Transportation Department, in creating this big, bold vision and taking the initial steps toward establishing a statewide trail system. One of their first actions was to hire a statewide trails coordinator, and shortly after, Jack Remington came on board as their first and fearless leader.
Well, when ORTAC first met, we were 8 individuals, never had spoken to each other, we weren't acquainted, but suddenly we coalesced rather quickly, knowing what the responsibility is. The vision really was given to us, and we had to do something with the vision. So we looked upon ourselves as pathfinders and figuring out the plan that should go with the vision.
They also paused and figured that before anything, they needed a clear picture of what trails already existed in the state. So they developed an inventory of trails. When the act passed 50 years ago, it wasn't that no trails existed yet in Oregon. In 1971, the U.S. Forest Service managed 92% of trails in the state, over 7,000 miles. State parks only managed 72 miles. And the 5 communities of Portland, Eugene, Salem, Corvallis, and Medford had a total of 75 miles of trails between them. The inventory report called for more miles closer to home, as 90% of existing trails in 71 were over an hour from population centers, and many of them inaccessible during winter. The report correctly projected that interest in trails would only grow over time. Next, ORTAC and the state worked with trail advocates and other land management agencies to plot out their first vision of a statewide system of long-distance trails, including some existing trails like the PCT and other trails that communities were actively planning or developing.
The initial efforts were more focused on major trail systems like the Pacific Crest Trail and the proposed Oregon Coast Trail that had been around for a long time and still is. But we realized that maybe that's the wrong approach, that we should put trails where people are and not have to bring people to where trails are. So that approach seemed to really appeal to so many of the cities and counties, park districts, because they had a SCORP plan concept, and the two came together essentially. The major trail systems that were being proposed in communities wasn't limited to the bigger communities, because many of the smaller communities had people who like to ride mountain bikes or like to run, and they stepped up and said, well, how do we get in on this?
ORTAC and state staff worked side by side with these and other communities to explore feasibility of these trail plans, provide expertise, and to showcase to other communities what was happening and what was possible. They pointed to Southern Oregon, where the Bear Creek Greenway was already taking shape. They collaborated with the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management to create more connections within and into the scenic and rugged lands they manage. They continued to work with proponents of the Oregon Coast Trail. They looked to, learned from, and worked with planners in the Portland metro area, like Mel Huey.
I'm Mel Huey, and I'm a recently retired trails planner with Metro, which is the regional government for the Portland area. I spent 44 years working on trails, so I'm almost as old as the Oregon State Trails Act, which is exciting because I've seen a lot before, and I've seen what has happened because of the Oregon Trails Act. There's been so much activity over the last 50 years in trails in the metro area. We planned for 1,000 miles of trails separated from the road and the streets, and we're about at 400 miles. And the 40-mile loop trail, which started at 40 miles, is now 140 miles, encircling the city of Portland. And we worked a lot with the state and other partners. And another great trail is the Wildwood Trail, which is more of a nature trail from in the Forest Park area, which is actually the longest trail in the region at over 30 miles because it meanders so much. So there's just a lot of activity, urban trails, nature trails, equestrian trails. We've been fortunate to build this system of over 400 miles to date. because of cooperative efforts between all the governments, federal, state, local, county, regional, cities, neighborhoods. It takes a village, it takes a metropolitan area to build this trail system. Cooperative efforts are critical. Trails, unlike parks, take years to plan, design, and build because it crosses over hundreds and thousands of properties.
Over the last 50 years, the community of trail planners, advocates, volunteers, dedicated land managers, and other partners have only grown in number and expertise across every region of the state. And not only have our trails grown in miles, but so has our collective vision for what's possible. Trail mileage in the 5 communities inventoried in 1971 has grown over tenfold, and thousands more planned miles are found in our local park and transportation plans, and within the big, bold visions of the wider trails community. As we look towards the next 50 years, we asked for advice from these 2 longtime trail leaders.
Well, if I were to advise the trails community on going forward, I would say stay determined, because you've got a winner. You're riding a champion, and you need to recognize that the connections still, in many cases, still need to be worked on. The maintenance of some of these trails needs to be looked at again and again, because they wear out. There's Mother Nature comes along and disturbs things, fires or storms and such. And I think we need to pay a little more attention to what the climate is doing, because we know where a trail would look nice and be enjoyable to ride, but it may also be fragile in an ecosystem where there's slides, where there's fires, where there's flooding. So we need to somehow find a balance between the two. And we need to understand that there are many user groups, some who are not familiar with trails, who want to go out for the first time or second time. And so it's getting educated to the users. I think the making trails fully accessible to all users is a duty that needs to occur. We can't do that with every trail in every situation, but I think where possible, it's wise to look at the merits of that. Leadership comes from the lowest ranks in terms of youth and all. So I think that's very important to have that kind of leadership at all levels.
I'd love to share with you my advice. First of all, just really get organized and work cooperatively. There are so many partners and allies, and even work with the people who are skeptical of trails. It's really important to work with everybody. And over the years, Metro and our partners have worked with property owners who didn't want trails, but after spending a year or so with them, they ended up supporting trails. So it does take a long time. So my advice is have a good plan, get everyone involved, respect everyone's opinions, do all your research and homework, be patient. It takes a long time, and never, never, never give up. We need to really engage and get a diverse community and aging community involved. We need trails that are accessible for all. We need more trails close to where people live. And we also need trails further afield so people can get away from the urban area. For the younger generation and future trail planners, I wish them well. I have been lucky to have served the greater community over the years, and I welcome them, and I would love to mentor them, which I have been doing over the years, because it's critical to have a new generation of people savvy and technical savvy trail planners.
Today we watch this legacy continue and the growth of trail leaders across every region and local community. We celebrate the great work of stewardship groups across all user types who build and maintain our trails in partnership with recreation providers. We celebrate the groups and individuals who continue to advocate for trails. We celebrate the continued legacy of ORTAC, who still to this day convenes the trail community to share expertise as we collectively make our statewide vision become reality. And we celebrate the work of the Oregon Trails Coalition, a statewide organization working across all user types, motorized and non-motorized, to carry on this legacy.
I'm Steph Knoll with the Oregon Trails Coalition. So the Oregon Trails Coalition really came together in 2017 with our first statewide Trails Summit. As land managers and trail advocates and stewardship organizations, we're starting to have conversations about what were the universal needs and desires of folks who care about trails. A couple of things really rose to the top of the list. One was a desire just to convene and build relationships and have a more collaborative community around trails. That community that crossed jurisdictional lines, that kind of crossed sector lines between land managers and nonprofit organizations and business partners, so that folks could collaborate to get things done, so that folks could learn from each other for things that were happening well in other regions and that folks were struggling with in their local area. So the convening, a chance to build relationships was the one thing that rose to the top, and the other thing that was right up there as a big need on the statewide level was to work together to advocate for more investment in our trails. As we look toward the future, the coalition envisions an Oregon where everyone has access to trails where they can recreate in the ways that make them feel joy and health in their daily lives, and that these trails are both those little trails that you can get out on for a breath of fresh air after a long work day, or are also the kinds of trails that really inspire adventure, the kind of experiences that you plan and dream around. You can have multi-day adventures on. We really look at trails in that broadest sense of all recreation types, those trails that provide both recreation infrastructure as well as transportation infrastructure for folks. And really that we're all, even though we have different interests, different ways we like to recreate, we have so much in common, whether we're paddling or biking or hiking or on horseback or ATV or you name it. We all really have the same need for those places where we can get out, enjoy the beautiful places in Oregon, and have a place where we can just connect with ourselves. So in order to get to an Oregon where everyone has access to trails right where they live and work and go to school, there's going to need to be a much higher level of investment than is happening currently. And so as a coalition, we work together to really share both why trails are so important to us, and to come together to look for what are the opportunities to make continued public and private investment in our statewide trail network. Also, we know that there are other gaps in access to trails as well. Some people feel more comfortable on our public lands or out in the forest. Some people feel more comfortable recreating alone. Some people feel, aren't going to have that same sense of comfort unless we really are able to bring folks from all different backgrounds and all different abilities into conversations about what their local trail system needs to look like to be the kind of place where they're gonna be able to find that joy that so many of us turn to trails for. For all of these reasons, we really need our land managers, our stewardship organizations, our advocates to all be working together in order to build out the system that we want to see in our state.
This year especially, we say thank you to each and every one of you who have contributed to our trails for the last 50 years and beyond, and to encourage all of us to play a role in caring for the trails we love so we can sustain them into the next 50 years. Great. Well, we hope you enjoyed that video and learned a few things about the history of the Trails Act and saw some familiar faces. I think it's always so great to look back on our past and reflect on how these early leaders and actions really impacted our work that we do today. And when we are bogged down with projects that feel like they're taking forever, or to get stakeholders on board with, that we're reminded of these stories and reminded to have patience and also lift up the leaders among us. So moving on to our next fun little segment, one of the other things that ORTAC initiated in prior years was the Doug Newman Award. So Doug was a former ORTAC member, and one thing I learned talking to Ernie Drapella was just how much Doug was especially a big advocate to ORTAC and land managers when it came to furthering our system of winter Nordic trails. He was also really active in other ways in the outdoor recreation community, particularly in the Eugene area. Doug passed away during his ORTAC term in 1992, and to honor his legacy, ORTAC established an Achievement Award in his honor. And since then, these are the leaders who have been recognized as dedicating their work and their lives to furthering and improving our trails here in Oregon. I'm not going to list off all the names that you see here, but hope you recognize some familiar names, including Becky Wolf, who was most recently recognized for her work in the equestrian community, Gary Chapman, advocate for the Corvallis to Sea Trail, leaders in the Portland area like Mel Huey and Barbara Walker, and many, many Oregon Coast Trail advocates also on this list. So next up, I'm going to bring Robert Spurlock and Ben Hedstrom to the stage. Robert is a current ORTAC member, and Ben is a board member with Trail Keepers of Oregon, and they both are trail planners for Metro Parks and Nature. So welcome, Ben and Robert.
Thanks, Jody. Thanks, everyone. Hi, my name's Robert Spurlock, and I'm with ORTAC, the Oregon Recreation Trails Advisory Council. One of the best parts of being on ORTAC is helping to review the nominations and select the recipient of the Doug Newman Award each year. This year, we received more qualified award nominations than any of the past 5 years, any of the years that I've been involved. And it was really inspiring to get to read through the nominations of so many amazing trail heroes who've spent the better part of their lives advancing the trails movement in Oregon. But it was particularly gratifying to read the nomination that Ben here submitted for this year's Doug Newman Award winner, who I'm excited to announce is Tom Kloster of Trail Keepers of Oregon. So I've had the pleasure of working with Tom at Metro, Tom's day job, for the past 14 years, and I could go on and on about how much I admire Tom. But what's really always stood out to me about Tom is that he is just really smart and really friendly. Metro is a place where we work with a lot of smart people and a lot of friendly people. But the thing about Tom is that he's really smart and really friendly. And I literally don't think I've ever encountered him without a smile on his face. If any of you have ever talked with Tom, I'm sure you'll attest that he knows a lot about pretty much any topic. So as devotees, speaking for all of us here as devotees of trails and outdoor recreation in Oregon, we're all so lucky to have Tom in our corner. Congratulations, Tom. Now I'd like to hand it over to Ben to share a few words.
Thanks, Robert. I first met Tom in 2014 when I was a park planner with Oregon State Parks. He came to a meeting in the Columbia River Gorge to share some of his ideas for trails out there. And not only were they doable, they considered land ownership and potentially solve management issues that we were facing at OPRD. We ended up incorporating a lot of those ideas into the master plan out there. Ever since, I've been privileged to work alongside Tom as a board member on Trail Keepers and advance this important stewardship of our public lands. As a result of Tom's efforts to establish Oregon hikers and trail keepers, TKO has become a critical piece of maintaining Oregon's trail legacy across the state while also building important new sections of trail, including the Oregon Coast Trail, portions of the Oregon Coast Trail, and Punchbowl Falls Park in Hood River. In 2019 alone, 3,600 trail keeper volunteers tallied thousands of hours of work, contributing to almost 300,000 feet of trail maintenance in Oregon. TKO is also working to train crew leaders to share what was fast becoming lost knowledge when rangers were reduced on public lands in the 80s and 90s. We're hosting trainings for volunteers and land managers across the state, ensuring that Oregon's trail legacy will be left in good hands. Tom, I know I'm not alone when I say this award is very well deserved. We're thankful to ORTAC and OPRD for presenting Tom Kloster with the 2021 Doug Newman Award. Please share in celebrating Tom's work or any favorite memories you have working with Tom in the chat. I'm wearing my Tom style TKO hat today to celebrate.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ben and Robert, for announcing that award. I wish we were all in a big room together so we could be cheering and whistling and hugging or whatever else. And also on behalf of State Parks, I want to give a huge congrats to you, Tom. I know you and Trail Keepers of Oregon do so much for our parks, for our partners, our grant recipients, and all of us trail users. And this award is very well deserved. And we hope folks visit this virtual picnic table that will appear on your screen at the end of the session. We can jump over and actually congratulate Tom over video. So next up, we have another fun video for you. As you saw in the first video, so much progress has been made in our trail systems over the last 50 years. And this next video highlights just 9 of Oregon's signature trails or projects along them. If you've attended a trail summit in person in the past, you know we do a community updates section where we share updates and hear from folks about their trail project. And this is taking the place of that this year. And we are putting on a historic lens too, so we can see some of these direct impacts of the Trails Act on the development of these trails, the direct impacts of ORTAC and other individuals who've been recognized with the Doug Newman Award over the years. And then following the video, we are going to hear from Jared Kennedy with the Greater Hells Canyon Council about one of our newest signature trails in Eastern Oregon, the Blue Mountain Trail. But with that, we are going to get started and play this video for you.
The Bear Creek Greenway is a 20-mile paved multi-use path that links the cities of Ashland, Talent, Phoenix, Medford, and Central Point. While interest in a bicycle path in the area began in 1899, the first 3.5-mile segment was constructed after a bill was passed in the Oregon legislature in 1973 that authorized its initial development. Since then, Jackson County has incrementally acquired parcels of land along the Greenway with the support of local trail advocates, local communities, and state and federal funding investments. Especially in the early days, the Greenway was also an inspiration for other communities across the state who watched these developments and started planning their own regional trail systems. Today, the Greenway connects these communities and a system of parks along the trail. Plans are underway to continue to extend the trail to more parks and into the Rogue River Greenway, which would link the Bear Creek Greenway to Gold Hill, Rogue River, and Grants Pass. Sadly, much of the Greenway was impacted by wildfires in 2020, but through support from partners and the power of volunteers, Jackson County has reopened the trail and continues to restore the surrounding area. On the western side of the state is the newly completed Corvallis to Sea Trail. The genesis for the trail dates back to 1974 when the idea for a trail through the Oregon Coast Range was first suggested. Early organizers had difficulty securing permission from landowners along the route, so the idea eventually was shelved in the late 90s. In 2003, a group of trail enthusiasts resurrected the plan and formed the Corvallis to Sea Partnership, which has worked tirelessly to make this dream a reality. The partnership negotiated routes with public and private landowners where the trail crossed, including the Siuslaw National Forest, which finalized a 20-year permit for the trail in 2018. Volunteers with the partnership have dedicated over 50,000 hours to lay out, build, and continue to maintain the route, removing thousands of pounds of invasive weeds, clearing brush, building bridges, installing kiosks and hundreds of signs, developing and refining maps, and so much more. The 62-mile hiker-biker trail was completed in 2020, and on August 21st, 2001, was officially opened with a ribbon-cutting ceremony held at both ends. Gary Chapman, president of the C2C Partnership, compared the project to the works of Michelangelo at the ceremony, saying, "You must have patience because you're going to have setbacks. You may be set back for a year or two every time. You need a plan B, an alternate that will keep things alive and going. It's like Michelangelo and some of his sculptures. It is inside that block of marble. The trail is inside that hillside, that mountain slope. It's just a matter of carving it out." The Oregon Coast Trail was one of the first trail plans supported by ORTAC under the Trails Act. The northernmost section of the OCT was designated by ORTAC and the Oregon Transportation Commission as officially hikeable in 1975, although it was noted that some gaps in the initial 62-mile segment still needed to be filled. One of those gaps was between the southern Neahkahnie Mountain Trailhead and the city of Manzanita, where hikers had to walk along the shoulder of a tight and dangerous section of Highway 101. From changing land ownership to steep terrain, filling this gap wasn't without its challenges. Led by volunteer Connie Soper, a partnership formed in recent years between the City of Manzanita, Lower Nehalem Community Trust, ODOT, Tillamook People's Utility District, and Trail Keepers of Oregon to make this new connection a reality. Staff from Oregon State Parks and Chris Bernhardt with C2 Recreation Consulting worked with these partners to plan a trail that was constructed by Trail Keepers of Oregon and the Northwest Youth Corps. In 2020, this section of the Oregon Coast Trail was officially open to hikers and will be maintained by Trail Keepers of Oregon into the future. And if that wasn't enough to celebrate, this project recently received a Recreational Trails Program Achievement Award from the National Coalition for Recreational Trails. Congratulations to everyone involved for their great work. Further down the Oregon Coast Trail in Yachats is a segment named the Amanda Trail. OCT hikers walk this section as they head southbound from Yachats towards Cape Perpetua. The trail pays tribute to Amanda in our history of stolen lands and forced removal of Native peoples by settlers and their militias. In 1855, Central and Southern Oregon Coast tribes signed a treaty ceding their lands in exchange for what they thought would be a peaceful life on a reservation if the treaty was ratified by Congress, which it wasn't. The large treaty area in the Central Coast and Coast Range was eventually cut to allow for more settler homesteading. In 1864, the military was ordered to capture any natives living off the new reservation boundaries. Amanda DeCruz was one of the 46 people who were captured and ordered to walk north to the Alsea Sub-Agency Reservation in modern-day Yachats. Amanda was a blind woman living on a ranch near the Coos River with a settler and their daughter Julia, who she was forcibly separated from. The last record of Amanda is found in a journal kept by Corporal Royal Bensel, who described the painful walk as Amanda walked along the ragged rocks around Cape Perpetua and tore her feet. Before this history was widely known, the Siuslaw National Forest and State Parks had plans to develop a section of trail headed north from Cape Perpetua. The idea was shelved because of terrain and funding challenges. Joanne and Norman Kittle purchased the private land north of Cape Perpetua in the mid-'80s and were committed to creating an Oregon Coast Trail connection through their property. And finally, in 1997, the trail was completed thanks to the work of volunteer trail builders, land management staff, Angel Job Corps students, and the Kittles. Later, a trail was constructed alongside Highway 101 so hikers can safely walk from Yachats to the Amanda Trail. In 2003, a statue created by local artist Cy Meadows was donated and placed at a gathering area along the trail. The statue has attracted more visitors to the trail and serves as the center of educational events and ceremonies. Beginning in 2012, Yachats trail volunteers and the city have partnered with local tribes to host an annual peace hike on New Year's Day. The peace hike commemorates the tragic events that Amanda has come to symbolize and is helping to bring reconciliation to a previously divided people. One of the remaining challenges of the trail is a bridge crossing over a creek. After the original bridge was replaced due to age, the replacement bridge was wiped out by a landslide, and a temporary bridge is on its way to being replaced by a suspension bridge in early 2022. The suspension bridge is its own story of partnership. Joanne Kittle expanded her land donation to state parks and helped coordinate a village of funders, including the foundations of the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians and Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, Siuslaw Indians, the City of Yachats, Lincoln County, Oregon State Parks, FEMA, View the Future, the Yachats Trails Committee, and so many more groups and individual funders. These partnerships and generous donations will help preserve access to the Amanda Trail for current and future generations. Near the Coast Range, the 21-mile Banks-Vernonia State Trail is one of the first rail-to-trails in Oregon. The trail follows an abandoned rail line where trains once hauled logs and lumber from Vernonia to Portland from the early 1900s through the 1950s. After the rail line was briefly used for an excursion train in the 1960s, it was abandoned and purchased by the Oregon Department of Transportation in 1974 and now is managed by the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. While the trail was originally planned for hikers and bikers, local equestrians were also interested. So ORTAC and the state worked with the equestrian community to ensure their needs were also met by including a natural surface trail parallel to the paved trail in most sections. In 2007, Stubbs Stewart State Park opened adjacent to the trail, providing direct access for campers and parkgoers. Today, the trail is part of the 50-mile Tualatin Valley Scenic Bikeway and was recently connected to the Crown-Zellerbach Trail thanks to crews and volunteers with the City of Vernonia and Columbia County. The OC&E Woodsline State Trail is another long-distance rail-to-trail in Oregon that connects Klamath Falls to the community of Bly and the Sycan Marsh, and is one of the 10 longest rail trails in America. The almost 110-mile trail is built on the old rail beds of the OC&E and Weyerhaeuser railroads, which were largely used to support the region's timber industry from the early 1900s through the 70s. OC&E stands for Oregon, California, and Eastern, as the railroad was envisioned to connect southern Oregon to California and the eastern side of the state. When use of the rail lines slowed in the 1980s, Weyerhaeuser railbanked the lines and transferred management to Oregon State Parks in 1992, and the transition from railroad to trail began. Today, the trail is used year-round by hikers, bikers, equestrians, Nordic skiers, and other non-motorized trail users. The route includes a paved multi-use segment in Klamath Falls, gravel routes through the Fremont-Wainema National Forest, an over 100-year-old railroad trestle, wildlife viewing, open scenery along the Sprague River, and solitude for miles and miles. Much further north, along the Oregon-Washington border, the historic Columbia River Highway was constructed between 1913 and 1922 to provide an east-west transportation corridor while also providing better access to the dramatic scenery of the Columbia River Gorge. The historic highway was replaced by the interstate in the 1960s, and many sections were covered, filled with rock, and abandoned. Since the early 1970s, ORTAC and other advocates were in discussion with the Forest Service about their desires to establish a bicycle trail along sections of the historic highway, and in the 1980s, new interest gained hold. Today, thanks to the work of ODOT, Oregon State Parks, and their many partners, 68 of the 73 miles of historic highway are open, and 12-plus miles are car-free stretches open only to people hiking, cycling, electric bicycling, or using wheelchairs. ODOT continues to work towards closing the remaining 5 miles of gaps that will complete the trail, making additional connections near Hood River and providing access to even more dramatic views of the Columbia River Gorge. And in line with the early vision of ORTAC, visitors can also access the historic Columbia River Highway State Trail from the 40-mile loop trail system that continues to be expanded in and around the Portland metro area. A more recently designated route, the Oregon Timber Trail, is a nearly 700-mile-long backcountry mountain bike route crisscrossing the Cascade Range from California to the Columbia River Gorge. The Oregon Timber Trail Alliance, or OTTA, was founded in 2016 to enhance rider experience, uplift communities, educate, and steward the lands that it passes through. Quickly rising to the top of its field, the trail has attracted riders from over 30 countries and formed a large community of supporters who trek to remote corners of the state to volunteer their time, maintaining and rehabilitating the many rugged and abandoned sections of route. A primary focus of the OTTA and its volunteers has been the Watson Fire Rehabilitation Project. This project is working to rehabilitate a 15-mile section of the Fremont Tier burned in the 60,000-acre Watson Fire in 2018. With support from the Recreational Trails Grant Program, the OTTA has been able to hire a professional trail builder as well as dedicate several thousand hours of volunteer time to this massive effort. This scenic and thrilling segment is located just outside of Paisley, Oregon, and is slated to be completed in summer of 2022. And finally, moving back up to the northwest corner of the state, a signature trail is being planned to run through the heart of the North Coast Range, from Banks to Tillamook, following the former Pacific Railway and Navigation Company rail line. The idea for the Salmonberry Trail gained traction in 2011 when the port of Tillamook Bay approached the state and Cycle Oregon about exploring their trail vision, and the following year, a formal partnership was formed. Since then, trail lovers, land managers, and other partners have developed a path forward to make this incredible connection from the metro area to the coast. The ambitious proposal isn't without challenges. From an over $200 million price tag to steep canyon crossings and the need for cross-jurisdictional maintenance and management, it will take years for the dream to be realized. But as we've seen from early advocates of the Oregon Coast Trail and Corvallis to Sea Trail, it's important to all these partners and trail lovers that we never give up. And this dream is already on its way. The line has been rail banked, preliminary engineering is done, communities have adopted the route into their transportation plans, funding has been secured for small segments near the coast, and conservation and stewardship planning is underway. Looking towards the future, this 86-mile non-motorized trail will eventually serve hikers, pikers, equestrians, hunters, and all Oregonians and visitors who have a passion for the outdoors. To learn more about the project, visit salmonberrytrail.org.
Hi, I'm Jared Kennedy. I work for Greater Hells Canyon Council. I serve as our development director, as well as the Blue Mountains Trail project lead. I am so excited to share more of the Blue Mountains Trail with you today as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Oregon Recreation Trail System Act. The Blue Mountains Trail is the newest effort that complements the work to build signature trails across the state. It's an effort to build a trail that spans all of Northeast Oregon through the Blue Mountains. The trail's start and end points are in Joseph and John Day. The 530 miles between goes through Northeast Oregon's 7 wilderness areas and Hells Canyon National Recreation Area. It's a route that connects existing trails and roads, albeit some in serious states of disrepair, and it's almost entirely on national forest lands. The Blue Mountains, Oregon's largest ecoregion, are rarely visited outside of the major trailheads in the Willowas, and the region is poorly known for what it is. This is the most mountainous part of the state, with more peaks above 9,000 feet found here than in the Cascades. The rivers are undammed and wild. The gorges are huge, Hells Canyon being the deepest in North America. It's a place of intact forests, abundant wildlife, and a deep history. It's the ancestral lands of the Nez Perce, the Confederate tribes, the Umatilla, the Warm Springs, and the Burns Paiute. And here you will find communities that support recreation, Joseph and Enterprise, Troy, Tollgate, LeGrand, Anthony Lakes, and Baker City, Sumter, and John Day. The Blue Mountains Trail invites you to walk its path and to join the effort to protect, connect, and restore vast stretches of the region. The Blue Mountains Trail was officially launched in 2021, and this year we started what we call the development stage of the project, getting the trail ready for experienced hikers and inviting more people to join the effort to build the trail into a world-class hiking destination. This photo was taken by Mike Unger outside of Sumter in his ground truthing through hike in 2020. It's one of the rare bushwhacks found on the trail, and this year we made substantial progress finding the paths of least resistance and providing wayfinding through the trail's most challenging terrain. Thanks to Mike and his wife Naomi, who hiked the trail with him in 2020, and thanks to the support of Travel Oregon, we published 10 in-depth town guides early this summer for the towns and communities on the trail. These include resupply information, as well as lodging, food, and other town highlights. We even identified public transportation options. There is a way, with some schedule limitations, to do the whole trail by taking public transportation to and from the communities on the route. This is just the start of what's going to be a more involved community engagement process. Between now and the spring of 2023, we plan to hold 8 community engagement workshops to broaden the town guides, identify more key heritage and historical information to include in our trail resources, and that's going to include a future guidebook, and to provide information and businesses in the towns with more information about the effort, address any concerns they may have, and share more about how they can get involved. Also, with Travel Oregon support, we produced these beautiful, detailed route section maps with the help of conservation geography. These maps highlight the route relative to the towns, national forests, and wilderness areas, roads, and other geographical waypoints. A corresponding data book and hiking maps using U.S. Forest Service maps is also available for hikers upon request. The maps and town guides are available on our website. In the coming months, we will publish smaller Blue Mountains Trail itineraries for sections of the trail that are in good condition and well suited to day hikes or short backpacking trips, and the options are plentiful. 2021 also kickstarted our trail stewardship efforts. Hikers signed up to carry small hand tools to help clear down trees and brush. We hired Pip Redding as our summer trail coordinator to oversee the trail clearing efforts and to get involved with the other groups already doing great work on trails in Northeast Oregon. In 2022, we will expand our trail stewardship efforts, and we are looking forward to working with the Wallowa Mountains Hells Canyon Trail Association, the Blues Crew, and Trail Keepers of Oregon on opportunities to get more people, both residents and visitors alike, engaged with the hard work of maintaining and restoring the trails in Northeast Oregon. We promise we'll make it fun. So email me if you're interested in joining or learning more about these volunteer opportunities. 2021 also came with its fair share of challenges, the biggest being the weather and trail closures. This summer was undoubtedly the hottest on record in the Pacific Northwest, and in Northeast Oregon, temperatures were above 100 degrees from the very beginning of the summer. Fires burning in the Umatilla National Forest, including the Elbow Creek Fire, which is shown here flaring up over the Grand Ronde River near Troy, led to the Umatilla National Forest being closed for much of July and August, and this shut down most of the trail during that whole time. And we know each year is going to bring its set of challenges, and this highlights why this is a long-term effort that will take years of hard work and lots of support. And speaking of supporters, we have many individuals, businesses, and organizations to thank for the incredible progress that's gone into the trail this past year. We will be announcing some new business supporters shortly, but I want to say a huge thank you to Six Moon Designs, Sawyer, Travel Oregon, Eastern Oregon Visitors Association, Anthony Lakes, and the Trailhead for their financial support this year, allowing us to develop materials and procure the tools we need to make the Blue Mountains Trail a reality. Before I turn it back to Steph, I'd like to share a little bit more about Greater Hells Canyon Council. We are a conservation organization focused on protecting, connecting, and restoring the wildlands, waters, and native species in the Greater Hells Canyon region. Our history begins in the 1960s when we successfully stopped the effort to dam the Snake River through Hells Canyon and advocated for the creation of the Hells Canyon National Recreation Area. We now work on conservation efforts across all of Northeast Oregon. Our effort on the Blue Mountains Trail parallels ONDA's work on the Oregon Desert Trail. Renee Patrick from ONDA has been a huge supporter of our effort, lending us tools and guidance to accelerate our work. She even successfully solo through hiked the trail in 2020. Renee says it best when talking about why conservation groups and long distance trails go well together. She wanted to share some of her brief thoughts on the effort, as well as put out a challenge to others working on signature trails. She says, the Blue Mountains Trail and the Oregon Desert Trail were both created as more than just hiking opportunities. Greater Hells Canyon Council and Oregon Natural Desert Association are taking a more active role in engaging the quiet recreation community in public lands and conservation issues that are facing the landscape of Eastern Oregon. We have heard that recreationists want an immersive experience in some of the most remote places in Oregon, places that offer a chance to learn about issues like ecosystem resiliency and habitat connectivity. As some of you are developing new trails and recreation opportunities across the state, we'd like to challenge you to find a way to connect with public lands issues and see trails as a chance to truly engage on the deeper level with recreationists. To us, this is a great opportunity to work with other organizations, tribes, and conservation groups to educate the public and ask more of the recreation community. Together, we can empower hikers, bikers, paddlers, and horseback riders to participate in the future of the lands that make our trails possible. So it's an honor to be here today. I'm so glad to share more about the Blue Mountains Trail with you. This is what recreation in Oregon is all about, and we are so lucky to live in an incredibly beautiful place. I invite you to follow along by checking out our website, hellscanyon.org. There you'll find trail resources. You can sign up for trail news via our newsletter, and you can follow us on Instagram and share your photos using the Blue Mountains Trail hashtag. We hope to see you out hiking the Blue Mountains Trail in the years to come. And I hope you can join us for a panel tomorrow at 10:45, along with Renee Tkach from Friends of the Columbia Gorge, and Nick Green, City Manager of John Day, to learn more about connecting long-distance trails with rural communities. With that, I'll leave you now and turn it back over to Steph. Thanks, Steph.
Thank you, Jared, and deep thanks to everyone out there who's been working to build out and maintain these big, bold signature trail projects, the ones in the video and the ones not covered today, but equally a part of the Oregon Signature Trails vision, like the Yamhalis West Sider Trail in Yamhill County and the Joseph Branch Trail in Wallowa County and others, as advocates work diligently in the face of many challenges to bring trails to our communities for the benefit of residents and visitors alike. As the Oregon Trails Coalition looks forward to how we most strategically collaborate with our partners, we need to identify the shared challenges to address, of course, but most importantly, we need to know that what visions we're working toward. We asked our Oregon Trails community, what is your vision for the next 50 years of trails in Oregon? And this next video shares some of what you told us.
My vision for the next 50 years for trails in Oregon is that not only will this trail be built, but many other trails.
My vision is for an off-street trail connecting every Oregon town, city, and visitor destination. I'd like to see completion of the Infinity Loop through hiking trails.
I cannot wait to hike all the way from Astoria to Brookings along Oregon's coast.
My vision for the Oregon Trails is to complete the entire length of the Oregon Coast Trail, as well as restore the trails that we lost due to the fires, especially up the Santiam Canyon and in the Cascades.
Congress will fund our land managers, and the Oregon legislature will fund our land managers so that they are better able to protect our forests from catastrophic wildfires, and they'll be able to maintain our trails without so much reliance on volunteer help.
Represent a true spectrum of unique and healthy experiences for visitors and residents.
My vision for the trails in the next 50 years are more sustainable and accessible trails.
More equitable and accessible distribution for historically marginalized folks, like those experiencing disability, low income, and people of color, and a sustained investment for the building out and maintaining of the system.
Is for trail agencies to improve their trail websites, to provide information for people of all abilities to know what's there so that they can make informed decisions as to what trail meets their desired experience.
Vision for Oregon Trails over the next 50 years is better wayfinding signage and more family-friendly adventures, more inclusive and accessible opportunities for Oregonians, and increased opportunities for both motorized and non-motorized recreation.
Growth in accessibility for folks on bikes, because it's been a really growing sport, and I'm excited to see it continue to grow.
My vision for the future? Families who get a lot out of motorcycle trails also put a lot back into motorcycle trails for the next family.
We try to make a lot of opportunities for people to connect with trails they love by helping to keep them clean and well maintained.
That everyone who uses a trail in Oregon feels safe and welcome in the outdoors, and that we have created a culture of stewardship around Oregon's trails where all trail users pitch in to take care of the trails and one another.
Our 50-year vision for Oregon trails is that they're a safe
and welcoming
place for everybody, and that trails and natural lands are well cared for
by inspired stewards
and dedicated public resources.
Connecting communities, in particular along the Oregon Coast Trail and the Salmonberry Trail.
I have a vision for tree-lined walking trails that would take people from neighborhoods to nature.
There's some amazing giant trees that still exist that don't have any access, and so I would love to see those public lands developed for the next generations.
We're working on a 150-mile system of paths and bikeways, mostly separated from traffic. We're 72% done. In 50 years, I'd like to see it 100% done.
Congratulations to Oregon Trails and 50 years.
We know that trails of all types, whether by paddling or hiking, cycling, skiing, or on horseback, are a primary way that people get out and experience our diverse beauty. Travel Oregon is fully invested in creating access and opportunities to and within Oregon's outdoors through developing new signature trails, as well as sustaining our natural environment through stewardship investments. Travel Oregon is a proud partner in making the outdoors accessible to all through a wide diversity of world-class trails, and to join with all of you in celebrating the 50th anniversary of Oregon's recreation trail system.
Well, that was such a great way to start winding down our session. Thank you so much to everybody who sent in a video. They were so inspiring to me, and I hope inspired many of you in the audience today. But before we close out our session and show one last really fun video that someone sent us that I think is guaranteed to make you smile, we want to announce a new social media toolkit and campaign that is just being released by Oregon State Parks and the Trails Coalition. So when we got together with ORTAC and the Trails Coalition to brainstorm ways to recognize the 50th this year, what took shape is a messaging plan to really highlight the importance of trails as drivers of economic, physical, and mental health benefits, to drive home the trails don't maintain themselves, and to lift up the stewardship groups across the state who do an incredible amount of work maintaining and building our trails, and to call for all of us to play a role in caring for our trails into the next 50 years. And this slide here says it's coming soon, but it's actually here now, and Steph is going to drop a link in the chat to you all. And then here is just a preview of some of these social media images that were developed for land managers, trail groups, advocates, or really anyone to share on their social media channels. And the toolkit that we developed includes suggested messaging or captions to go along with these photos. It was just posted on our website at Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, and you will see more about it very soon here in an Oregon Trails Coalition newsletter and on our social media channels in the next couple weeks. So check it out and please share it. And then one of the links that we are promoting through the toolkit and suggested messaging is this map that the Trails Coalition developed in recent months. So this map, it shows stewardship groups across the state with really simple information about going to their website and where to learn more about those groups. And we're hoping that this toolkit will help draw more traffic to your sites if you're with one of these groups or partner with one of these groups, so that interested volunteers or supporters can connect with a group near them. And if you visit the Coalition's website, you can find a form to complete to either submit or update your group's information. And so please spread the word to any groups you know who aren't on the map already. And even if you don't have volunteer opportunities right now, you can still get your website linked up here so that folks can at least learn more about what your organization does. And with that, I will pass things back to staff.
Thanks, Jody. And you may have noticed I did not drop the link to that toolkit in the chat yet, but we will add that to this session description on the site. I'll do that after this session is over. So if you come back to this website, you can find those pieces. And we'll also share more about the toolkit next week in our Coalition e-news and blog. I just want to say that I think I have the best job in the world as I get to collaborate with so many visionaries and smart, fun, dedicated advocates and stewards of the trails that are so important to our communities for health, for transportation, for recreation and renewal, for deepening our understanding of the places we love, and for pure joy. And I want to let you know that everyone is invited to help build the next chapter of collaboration through the Oregon Trails Coalition. Save the date. Our All Coalition virtual annual meeting is December 2nd, 10 to noon. Bring your vision for the next 50 years of Oregon Trails, and we'll dig into how we work collectively in the months and years to come to achieve it. We're going to end this session with a music video. That's right, move over, MTV. We're going to celebrate the hard work of all of you trail stewards out there, and especially you Sawyers. This video is courtesy of some Willamette National Forest volunteers working with Cascade volunteers, the Salamander crew, and the Scorpion crew. And after the video, we hope you'll join us at the Summit picnic table. Just scroll down from this event window, look for the words the picnic table with the picture of the picnic table. We'd love to see you there to raise a glass to Tom Kloster and everyone else working on our trails. And don't forget to look ahead at all the great sessions and networking opportunities and film night coming up this week. And thank you in advance for filling out session evaluations to help us plan future programming. The recording of this session will be available on the Summit site. And with that being the end of my housekeeping, I just want to say cheers.
Some people say a trail's made out of mud, but a sawyer's trade is more about wood. Chain and bar, or a whip that's long, a mind that's keen and a back that's strong. You cut 16 logs, and what do you get? A shirt full of sawdust and a sunburned neck. Dispatch, don't you call when I'm overdue. The radio's dead and my cell phone too. We went out one morning when the sun didn't shine, picked up our tools and hiked in a line. We cleared 16 trails to meet our goal, and the district ranger said, bless my soul. You cut 16 logs, and what do you get? A shirt full of sawdust and a sunburned neck. Dispatch, don't you call when I'm overdue. The radio's dead and my cell phone too.
Yeah, it really falls by.
Keep walking.
We worked all morning in the drizzle and rain. My back sure hurts and my feet are in pain. I was trained in the chain brake to use every time, and my offside cut always falls in line. You cut 16 logs, and what do you get? A shirt full of sawdust and a sunburned neck. Dispatch, don't you call when I'm overdue. The radio's dead and my cell phone too. If you see me coming, better step aside. The pack I'm hauling is 6 feet wide. One saw is silky and the other one steel. If the power doesn't do it, then the crosscut will. You cut 16 logs, and what do you get? A shirt full of sawdust and a sunburned neck. Dispatch, don't you call when I'm overdue. The radio's dead and my cell phone too.